just answering questions with WebTech. I did a couple of videos that involved something that will get me lots of page views, but I don't do videos on it very often. But when I do, I often have to do several videos to go as deep as I can, even if it's one assertion. One of the assertions recently was that a specific individual had to be, must be, you can't prove it to me otherwise, can't debunk it, is involved in some way in the deaths in Delphi. You may have noticed I'm not using the most common terms for this because YouTube will eventually start flagging videos that use any buzzword-like statements, like naming the two individuals that died, which I think is a bad idea for anybody to do on a channel just on principle. But anyway, I did a set of videos on a set of assertions. One is a specific individual must be involved because I say so, and then people say, well, everybody knows XYZ because I saw it on the internet, and then they do not provide me proper citations, nor do the sources they cite if they bring them up. So I immediately put up a giant nope. If you're going to make an assertion that's going to affect whether or not a person gets beaten up in an alleyway someday because someone remembers them from some obscure video on some sleuth channel, you better get it right. And the assertion about that individual is that they had to be guilty, and the current assertions, again, no one providing evidence, is the person was questioned by the police department in Delphi, Indiana, took a polygraph, and they're keeping an eye on him, and now the assertion is he also failed the polygraph. No, the assertion was originally he passed it. And again, no one will offer any citation or proof or reference, and the only thing people bring up to try to prove their point is someone claiming to be the same person that's named and shamed, that they won't show me the proof it's the same person. Meanwhile, I look up and find, as someone said, Google's your friend, but I'm not being sarcastic. Haha. You can look up through hundreds of sources that the person's name, it's only two parts of the name, not a middle name, not an initial, no time and date stamp for birth or anything else more specific. I found, at minimum, currently, in Indiana itself, 2 people. In the area around Delphi, nobody, but in previous years, anywhere from 8 all the way down to nobody. And unreliably, because many websites pad the results, hundreds of people have gone through that area in the year before and the year after the 2 individuals died in Delphi. I'm reiterating this is simply reality. And that means that you have to force people to provide precision, not persuasion. The evidence in the 2-second video is that the man is a professional railroader. I know lots of people who are railroaders. I'm a quasi-hobo and a cyber-hobo. And I grew up not on the wrong side of the tracks, but at a place they made the train tracks. And I've also lived in a town where they made the trains that were called FEMA trains. They're razor trains in a video game, by the way. The long, skinny ones that are used for carrying cars. They're not for carrying Christians with guillotines. And I also lived in an area which was one of the largest switch yards in the entire country. I'm not telling you exactly where, but you can figure it out pretty quickly. I've been around enough of this to know some of my relatives are railroaders. And I've technically worked on a railroad the livelong day for, well, it was 2 days. I wasn't on a chain gang. That would make it a whole really cool blues song. I do actually have some reference here. And I've had to research this heavily because of the aforementioned FEMA train bullshit. And thermite, which is used to weld tracks, which comes up every time you bring up 9/11. So, is the person of interest, or potentially a witness, or a person who hasn't been cleared or determined? The bridge guy. The bridge guy isn't really a target by the police force. It's a person who was obviously there, recorded by Liberty German. I think it was Liberty German's camera or the other person's, and that's it. It was a person who was there that day they couldn't account for, an unaccounted person, which is suspicious, except if I was there that day, I may not come forward either. And by the way, I've been accused of being bridge guy because I wore an outfit at one time that looked similar to someone found on the internet on my, I think it was Photo Bucket. The guy who found it was trying to find some proof that I was literally Satan because he's one of those people. but someone found the picture, and it doesn't look anything like the bridge guy, and I've been accused too. The witch hunting factor doesn't go away on the internet just because you don't want it to apply to your project. And he doesn't show any signs of being any different from a railroad worker or anybody else working on a cold day. Someone also made note that it seems odd that that day it was cold and yet hot, depending on when you look up. It's a similar latitude to where I'm at. Can't mention anything better than that. Time of year, you could have a day where you get up in the morning and it's ice cold, and in midday it's in the 70s. Depends. Do I want to go look up the official weather report for the area that's taken at the airport no one lives at? Or weather recordings by amateur stations that can be defective? Do we need to do that? I'm not going to go there. Unless you ask me nicely for it, I don't need to. Do I believe this is a professional railroader? I don't see an indication of it being anything other than a person ambling along on a train track with dead spaces in it. You used to be able to look down at it and see the holes in it. And trying not to fall through. Most people look down and walk in a wobbling fashion. If you're walking on ice, you're going to walk duck-footed if you don't want to fall down. I naturally do that because I grew up in an area in Eastern Oregon. I'm narrowing myself down again, where I had to walk on ice that was deadly. And sometimes it was on top of packed snow. And it was this thick, and I was walking on top of ice. So I've learned to walk on ice. He's walking the way you would on a bridge. I don't see an indication this is any particular population or person. No one has been able to determine anything specific, and everybody reads things into it, including that the guy speaking had an accent and a southern twang now. If you want to know something here at the 6-minute or 7-minute mark here, I'm going to tell you something that I've noticed about people's evaluation of the bridge guy. Everybody says he's from whatever state they want him to be from, is an age they want him to be, including the police department. They made him a lot younger looking in the second photo, or second drawing, excuse me. And people have decided he's wearing dozens of different hats and dozens of different clothing and carrying all sorts of things because it's such a shitty video recording. Which means, again, emphasis added, pareidolia trolling by the police department. Everything they put out is so vague and so noisy that you can interpret it as being anything you want it to be. It's the perfect seed for a random number generator. That's about all it's good for. We're not going to get any data out of it unless we get the raw video and find out whether or not it's able to be cleaned up. Same thing with the audio. Until the Delphi Police Department is legally compelled, unfortunately, only by the victims' families to Freedom of Information Act style reveal all of the data, including the damaged file if it was, and recovered data if it is. Until we get that raw information, we will never know. This is a waste of time and a speculation on my part and yours. You obviously have not researched that much about any of the stuff that you're talking about. This is a person saying this generally about my channel, I suppose. No, I'm saying that I'm not allowed to because the people who claim to be whistleblowing or divulging truth, like the people who say alien disclosures any day now, but they won't disclose everything that they're doing so we know what's going on. The people who keep saying, I know who the Delphi killer is, and then give you no information are withholding evidence. I'm working with the lack of evidence you are. I'm simply coming to the conclusion that we should acknowledge that not just the police department is withholding evidence, but so are the truthers and researchers and sleuths. Some of them are withholding information. They want to come to a conclusion. They want to lead people a certain way so they can get an army of people getting eyeballs on something to try to figure it out. I understand that. But some of them are motivating you by just withholding information. Like, okay, somebody with the initials JC or whatever his name was. I'm not even saying it. I don't have it on my screen right now. I have one video where I name and shame the person essentially too. Give me a link to a Reddit posting or any posting that does a simple synopsis without stating opinion of where they got this information from. I don't want to hear, well, it was erased from Twitter. Shut the fuck up. I'm the guy who digs up posts from websites that are missing, much less individual accounts on them. What I'm seeing is a lot of investigators who are afraid to tell me what their sources are because they claim it's erased. I'm infamous for dredging shit back up people claimed was erased and find out they're lying about what was erased. A lot of you are aware of that. And if you weren't, you are now. Again, what is the Twitter account handle? ID code? URL? What is it? Where is it? Are they refusing to give you that information too? I bet they are. I couldn't find anybody who would even give a link to it. Oh, I have a screenshot. And again, the only archive I found of any of those images from the bridge was one of them that I probably made. From what I can tell, it was the one I did make when it was still on Google Street View. You're welcome. Nobody says thank you about that. Please do. I like it once in a while. People out there want a certain outcome to every mystery on the internet. There's a guy on the internet claiming that every single person who ever went missing anywhere in the world was never found again, even though they're alive and well and were found or were never missing in the first place. He calls it 411, missing in America, in the forest, and even though people keep defending him, he really did say it's Bigfoot, and he's a transdimensional being, not really a monster. But we're supposed to ignore that entire fucking fact, that that's what the guy does, because we want our mystery to never be solved, because most people who go missing show up again. Most children that go missing in the United States show up within 2 or 3 days. Actually, less than 3 days. It could be an hour. But there's still technically a missing person report, so you can lie and claim to be a Christian, so you're absolved of telling the truth, apparently, and refuse to acknowledge that they were found eventually by their family or the officials. They're not permanently missing. It's not an epidemic of missing children. It's parents not paying attention to the kids sometimes, or kids running away and coming back. And yes, a certain percentage of them, a tiny one, stay missing and then show up later under assumed names, usually with a kid and a family and a life. They just ran away from home. Some of them don't make it and they die. Those are the statistics I would consider very important. That and the ones that we never find again. Not 600,000 people go missing every year. And then they're all found. Well, let's leave that part out because we claim we're Christians and pass the hat or use PayPal or GoFundMe. Next. Honor and respect. Drink some water immediately. Ground yourself. I prefer the high voltage. We Truth Sleuths must land if we are to fly right. You are talented. Calls me Mr. Holmes. I hope it's the right kind. Not John. But may I recommend a few episodes of the British detective program titled Vera. She is teaching me that you have got your feet wet and you're going to build a bridge. Sleuth on, Brother Holmes. Sleuth on. Watson. My name isn't Holmes. Yo, Holmes. Anyway, I'll look into that. Maybe it'll be useful. If I find it useful, I'll make a playlist. If I find something useful, I'll tell you about it immediately. If it reduces the amount of no facts, opinion, and lies in the world, I don't care who does it. Oh, and an announcement. If anybody's curious, I mentioned in a previous video, one of my channels is named after Jim Lee. Jim Lee is a person who ran Climate Viewer. It's a project where he tried to use Google Earth and Google Street View and Google Maps to map out things people wanted to map out in his community. UFO sightings and all sorts of fun stuff. And then Google started ruining his ability to do that. So he reverse engineered Google Maps and made his own version of it. Climate Viewer. Just type it in, climateviewer.org or com or whatever. I'll put a link. I don't agree with him. I think he's wrong about a bunch of stuff. He talks chemtrails and shit. Doesn't matter. This is an example of my attitude on things. I don't agree with the guy. I think he's nuts. But he got off his dead ass and did something that a large multi-billion-dollar company did, and he did a pretty good job of it. It's obviously not completed. If you know of projects like that where they could collaborate and get information transferred back and forth, having a publicly built version of it that isn't restricted by large corporations like Google, that's valuable. Again, I don't like him. I don't agree with him. He's told me that I'm a jerk at one point. Well, he typed it once. But it's still awesome. I hope it's still up. If you're there, Jim. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.